We've got two presentations tonight, and our first one is going to be done by Billy Chrimes. He's currently employed by the Virginia Department of Emergency Management and serves as a regional search and rescue coordinator and the search and rescue training specialist. In addition to his duties operationally for the statewide coordination of search and rescue incidents, Billy is responsible for updating and administering the search and rescue training program and its staff of 20 adjunct instructors. Billy has managed dozens of search and cave incidents, including several large-scale tornado incidents in Virginia, the Cyclops Cave rescue, and a number of successful multi-day missions, including a 5-day search for an 8-year-old autistic child that saw up to 1,500 volunteer and professional searchers each day. Billy is also an NCRC instructor and the son of Harold Chrimes, a nearly 50-year veteran of public service. Please help me welcome Billy Chrimes.
A couple disclaimers here right off the bat. I do have a disclaimer slide, but this is part of our program. This is a lecture that we present as part of our search and rescue academies that we do here in Virginia. So kind of giving credit where credit's due. Just something that I feel is very important for all of us. This is taught from the search perspective, but it's not that far of a stretch for us to apply this to cave rescue events. All right, so here's my disclaimer. So I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I'm not presenting anything that is groundbreaking. Most of everything that's in here, and I'll show you the resources here in a second, is best practice from practitioners' perspectives, from lessons learned and things that we've seen out there. These are all tools for the toolbox. Not every tool is applicable for every situation, every time, or everyone involved. Everybody's different. And really the bottom line of this whole entire presentation, or the whole intent, is for us to take care of each other and hopefully continue on and give lots of years of service, because this is one of those items that tend to eat us, if you will. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the groups of people that responders may interact with and some of the psychological needs that may come up during an incident. We'll talk about what a critical incident is by definition. We'll discuss some of the stress and crisis response situations and ways that, of course, the last one being those tools that we can prevent, de-escalate, deal with those stress and crisis response situations. So most of the information that I have here, if somebody has this book laying around, you could almost follow through. This is what we used as our reference file when we wrote the course for our courses here in Virginia. And so it follows along really well here. And so to kind of give some credit where credit is due, most of this chapter was written by Dr. Jeffrey Mitchell of the University of Maryland, and he specializes in stress reactions and the treatment and how we can better confront those types of things. So again, not my work specifically, just passing on some good word, hopefully. So this quote is outlined in the book and really stands out as one of those really common sense items that comes up, and that is, a little bit of help rationally directed and purposely focused at a strategic time is more effective than more extensive help given at a period of less emotional accessibility. So really what we're talking about there is, if we recognize those times when people are emotionally accessible and in a lot of cases heightened by something that has affected them, we're going to be able to affect change better at those times than if we wait and start seeing things like self-destructive behaviors and things like that. So, it's the concept in the other world that I live in, which is firefighting. It's fire prevention. It's helping, it's changing the batteries in your smoke detector. It's having that plan to get out of your house if your house catches on fire. And just knowing how to identify those emergent situations and kind of deal with them. So the areas of psychological concern that we typically see, the missing person, or in our cases, it may be missing persons, or maybe somebody in the cave. They may not be missing, but they're the person we have to go rescue. Certainly, we're going to have family and friends quite often. One of the tough things for us in the caving community is we know a lot of each other. And so when that affects somebody that we know, that's almost like family, and can be really tough on the whole community. In this particular instance, we're talking about the community as the just general public as a whole, because they get emotionally involved in a number of different ways, and we have to help manage that as well. And certainly the mission personnel, those that are right in it, right in the thick of things, and whether it's managing the incident or whether it's those that are, going in and with their hands right in the middle of what's going on. We'll refer to the picture there of the mental health first aid. We'll talk about that later on in the slide deck here. So first, we'll talk a little bit about the missing and injured person. And I love this first kind of statement. It doesn't have a whole lot of oomph to it, but everyone has a psychological profile, healthy or unhealthy. So we all bring baggage, is a better way to say that. We all bring things to the table. Some are good, some are bad. Some people deal with things better than others. And so all of those have to be taken into consideration. And so some aspects of that may be what contributes to them going live. I do a lot of work with Dr. Robert Kester, who has done a lot of work in the area of lost person behavior. And, this is certainly one of those things that we talk about, is that psychology of what behaviors, what profiles we can put them in, and what can we expect them to do when they go missing, or when they get into a situation. How do they try to get themselves out of that? Some of those aspects of that psychology may also make them harder to find. I watch some of you all on Facebook and some of the surveying that goes on and pushing of passages and stuff, and sometimes cringe a little bit, because some of those aspects of that drive for you to go and do, really tight stuff that I used to fit in really well when I was younger, and I have found that I don't fit in that hole any longer. It certainly affects me psychologically when I look at that. But that may contribute to, what we're looking at. Is there risk-taking behaviors? Are there things like that? And so that's part of building that profile of that person that we're looking for. Do they have something underlying going on? Psychological state deterioration, that's kind of what I was talking about before, about once they get out there, once things have happened, once things have gone wrong and there's some realization that things are not going well, when fear kicks in, and we've probably all seen a number of different slides, and, that fight or flight kind of thing that goes on with us reacting to things, and there's a whole cycle that we go through there. And so that whole stopping and thinking, coming up with a plan and then putting that plan into motion is not something that folks that typically haven't been trained do. When you hear the stories of survival, when you hear people that get out of bad situations, a lot of them contribute that to their frame of mind, that they had been trained or they had been taught to stop and do things in a calm fashion, and not do things in that fight or flight type mindset. Sorry. Exposure to the elements. Certainly this is an issue for us in cave, because just like in search above ground, we have a variance of different environments that we're dealing with. It could be wet, it could be dry, it could be windy, it could be any number of different things. And so that exposure to the elements adds that additional stress to the person. And certainly probably one of the most stressful ones is those folks that and realize how dark caves are if they had never experienced that before with no light. That can certainly be a strain on their psychological state. When teams find that person or get to that person, whether it's that initial response team or whoever the case may be, they need to understand this as well. And that's part of what they need to take with them as their tools, is that ability to deal with their psychological needs, because there are going to be a lot of them. And, we'll talk more about us and taking care of us, but certainly that's one of the considerations that we have to make. And we talk about that when we put them in, package them into a litter. That's not necessarily a comfortable position to be in the first place, and then add to it the stress of everything going on. So base personnel need to be, or the above ground personnel, that support personnel, need to be ready to support those needs however we can. And so, some creative things when we get communications run into the cave, and being able to put a family member or a loved one on the phone and actually talk to them, that helps both of those parties and may de-escalate the situation a little bit, because hearing something third hand is not the same as hearing that voice firsthand that they recognize. So that may be something that we can do to improve things. First and foremost, we do want to address those medical needs, and those things, the ones that really jump out at us are the hypo or hyperthermia, dehydration, the ones that aren't listed here, nutrition, and rest. If we've all experienced this, if I'm too hot or I'm too cold, if I'm hungry, if I'm thirsty, I'm going to be a little grumpy. It's kind of like the Snickers commercial of, getting a little hangry and give them a Snickers, and they change personalities greatly. A little bit of sugar does us good in that aspect. So we want to make sure we address those main medical issues, and then some of the other stuff may help itself. We want to ensure safety, and that's safety of them, safety of us, and make sure that whatever situation they're in, whatever psychological state they're in, it's not a risk to our responders, and making sure that we address those things. Speaking directly to them and actively listening. I know a lot of us, we're type A personalities, and we like to be the main one talking in the conversation. But a skill that is very, very important is that active listening, and that engagement back with them. Things like repeating back what you heard them say in your own words, and paraphrasing things. Limiting bad news to them. Good news is we found you. The bad news is it's going to take us 2 days to get you out of here. That may be the honest answer, but probably not the one we want to give them right off the bat. And so, thinking of creative ways to make that news not so harsh can be really helpful. And giving up-to-date information, talking them through what's going on, and keeping them updated on what the progress of things are. Once we find them, that's half of the battle. The other half is getting the equipment there to get them packaged, get them out, or get what we need to treat them and get them. And so that may take time. That may take hours. And so as we have that information, as we can update that, making sure that they understand what's going on. Establishing a private area for returning to base so that they don't get overwhelmed with things like media, with rescuers, with family. This can be an embarrassing thing for them. This wasn't a situation they planned to get into this morning when they got out of bed, or the days before if it was an extended incident. So certainly make sure that those needs are taken care of, and we respect their privacy for what goes on. If multiple subjects are found, a lot of times we want to look at evacuation priorities. And so this may be, when we're talking about really extreme events, and the one that I think of probably the most often in our situation is an unfortunate event, but it happens occasionally, is when we have a death of one of the cave party members. That's something that we need to get, those folks away from, and deal with the psychological situation that's going on there. So, silent, shocked, withdrawn victims, certainly we've probably all seen this, where, somebody is just completely overwhelmed by what they're seeing. Just recently, well, actually 2018, it seems like recently because we skipped a whole year of living life, it seems. When we deployed down to Mexico Beach for the Cat 5 hurricane that hit there, I had a number of dog handlers that went down there with me, and it was really noticeable when we first got down there for almost the entire day that a lot of them were shell-shocked. A lot of them were just overwhelmed by what they saw, by the magnitude of the destruction and things like that. And so those are things we spent a lot of time doing in the evenings, was, you know, having that talk and talking about what was the most impressive thing they saw that day, and just giving them that chance to talk about it and work through it, and realizing that they weren't the only ones that were in that situation. And this is really where being creative is a quality that you want to try to have, because the answer is not the same for everybody. Not everybody responds the same way. And if you have that person that can connect with that silent person, get them talking, and get their mind off of things, that's a great thing. Certainly children, and we do get this, you know, we get those mixed parties of folks going in, and just by their nature, children are sponges, and so they're going to soak up what's around, including negative energy, you know, visions of things or sights that they maybe shouldn't see, or that we try to do our best as parents to shield them from when not necessary. And then as they get older, you know, it's the movie rating system, the whole G and PG and R thing. So we want to try to get them away from that. But at the same time, we don't want to separate them from, you know, that secure person that may be their comfort. So we want to consider that as getting folks away. Noisy and hysterical subjects, we want to try to get them away from the mass of folks, get them to the point of being calmed down, and try to deal with those situations. Again, safety being the number one issue there. Subjects who do not appear to be negatively affected. Oh, I'm fine, I'm great. When we know that they should be affected in some way. And that may be their normal reaction, that may be okay. But we want to make sure that we address that, and that we know that at some point they need that emotion, or they need to, you know, make it clear to us that they're doing okay. So if they're not negatively affected, if they're still functional, if they can still do things, then certainly we can utilize that to help with the other subjects, especially if in a bigger party. Missing persons, family, and friends, they all have their own psychological profiles. And sometimes that's what, you know, a lot of times in management of searches here in Virginia, this is one of the big things that comes into play, is the families and everything that goes on when they come there. You know, they're thrown into this stressful situation as well, by something a loved one, a family member, an acquaintance has done. They're going to be frightened. They're not going to understand that, you know, why are there 10 people standing here doing nothing, not seeing that there's, you know, 50 underground that are making things happen. They don't understand our tactics. They don't understand that there's a methodical, organized way of doing this. And so one of the things that we have found to be most beneficial in those cases is to actually sit down with the family and walk them through our process, show them how we progress, show them how we're communicating. You know, and in above ground searches, we have the advantage of, you know, using maps and things like that. And certainly we can use the cave map, albeit a little bit more complicated to read, but giving them that visual that they can see that we're actually moving things along, or we know where things are happening. They may need or have that feeling of being involved or being close. And so providing them a place close to base or close to what's going on, so that we can, just like with the person, keep them updated, not overwhelm them with bad news, and hopefully keep things moving along. So along those lines of passing information, so the ACT acronym, accurate, current, and timely. And we all know that this can change in a matter of minutes, especially in the cave environment where there's a delay of getting information a lot of times, because by the time that information gets to the command staff, it's already changed and there's already been progress made, or there's something else going on. During the Cyclops rescue of the 5 subjects that were in there, word came out that it was going to be about 3 more hours before they got everybody out. And by the time I got that information, literally within 30 minutes, 4 people came out of the cave. And so it was, it changed in a good way, but it changed kind of on the fly. And we had to make some adjustments there. So it was accurate when it got to us, but timely was a little bit off. We want to offer and encourage the use of critical incident stress management teams. They're an entire team that we'll talk about later that have clinicians, that have practitioners, that have people that are trained specifically to deal with everything that goes on, and not just with the rescuers, but with the family as well. And so they can address those specific things and elevate it as it needs to be elevated. We want to protect them from further stress. They're going to find their way to the press. We've all seen the news, and the news always tends to find that person. So there's going to be information out there. There's going to be things that people say, and sometimes it's not, great for the rescuers. It may be being critical of the rescuers, but all the same, we want to try to protect them from that. If they choose to engage that way, then they can. The worst thing we can do is ignore them. We want to include them. We want to engage them. We want them to be a part of it so that they understand what's going on. We want to build that rapport with them. The community as a whole, there may be a broad range of reactions. And so again, for us, 2 different communities here, we could say the whole caving community and then the general public. But they may become emotionally involved and personalized with it. That's really where our role would come in that caving community. We can rationalize with that. If somebody's in a particular situation or has been in a particular cave that we've been in, we can certainly put ourselves in that situation and say, oh, that could have happened to me, or I've used that type of rappel device, or I've done this before, and so that really can make it personal for us. We have folks out there that are just intrigued. That's the whole concept behind all the reality TV shows that are so successful now. We want to see what comes next, and it can be exciting, although dangerous all the same. And somebody's life is really in peril a lot of times, but to this person, it's just that mystery. It's like reading a novel. Certainly, we'll have our armchair quarterbacks and critics, some in the community here and some outside the community. It varies, but we do, we do have those folks that are always going to question what we do, and so we want to keep that in the back of our mind as we approach things, and just know that adds stress to us when we think about those things. When we think about, well, what am I going to be judged by when I make this decision, or how did I handle this? That adds that stress onto us as individuals while we're doing that rescue. They may be able to identify with that missing or lost person. And again, that first one and this last one really come into play with us here in the small caving community. But being able to identify with what's going on. And then, the ultimate one there is, all of these may show up wanting to help or be involved in some way by whatever has drawn them into this. And there's a myriad of other things here. We have the psychics that show up. We have the, not only family and friends, but the self-proclaimed experts that show up and want to help and want to get involved and can create a scene. And all of those things make it stressful. And that's really what we're trying to concentrate on here, is that that stress that is built up within an incident that we want to be able to deal with. This is some ugly guy here that was doing a press conference. Those that may recognize who's there. So this was at a pretty stressful search, a 5-day search that didn't turn out with a good outcome. But what we can say is that the way that we handled the entire incident really went very smoothly. And we just went through a process, and unfortunately it took 5 days for that process to culminate in the finding of this missing 5-year-old, and unfortunately deceased. But in that time, we engaged the community, and we issued news bulletins with specific things that they could do. So one of the things we commonly do with searches is we tell people, search your property, search your outbuildings, search, what you're familiar with. That's the best way you can help us. Or if you see something, say something. And so, one of the other big things for the first time for us in this particular case was the use of social media and getting ahead of that message, so that rumor control and making sure that accurate information was put out there, and that rumors didn't go rampant on their own. So jumping back to us specifically, every responder has their own psychological profile. It changes daily based on what is or isn't happening in our lives. We all have these different things that happen at different times, whether it be financial troubles, lack of sleep, problems at home, new job, baby, house, yada, 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 on and on and on. Each of them are going to affect us differently. Did we get in an argument with the wife before we ran out the door on this rescue? Or did we just not get sleep last night? Or did we work all night and now this came out, and so we're headed to the rescue? So all of those things can have an effect on how we handle the stresses that are placed in front of us. And even given a situation that may not seem as critical as a previous situation may affect us today because of these things. So many responders that have worked together may have knowledge or expertise. They've built respect and trust with each other. And so, certainly they can recognize problems amongst each other. We may have already identified not only those good attributes, but some attributes of, maybe somebody's lacking in a particular skill, and that can cause some stress. Is this person vertically competent enough to go do this cave, or some other things like that. Prior arguments over techniques. Do I already know that we don't agree with how to do a hauling system? I want to build this system, you want to build that system, and so that can create those stresses. Again, most of us are type A personalities. Most of us want to do it our way. And so this is really where our training kicks in. And we really have to be able to work our way through these to keep that stress level as low as possible. We're going to hopefully start each search mission with a clean slate. Is that me echoing?
No, I took care of it. Someone else was breaking in.
Okay. Hopefully we're going to start each search mission or each cave mission with a clean slate. And so with that, when it's time to play ball, it's time to play ball. We're not training. We're not debating the merits of one system or another. And we figure out a way forward, and we continue to move that forward. That will help facilitate success whenever possible. And so, if we can work together, if we can agree on a way forward, if we can have that respect and trust for each other, and recognize that knowledge or that expertise, all of these are self-serving and will help reduce that stress. All the same, all those things considered, Certainly there are a number of incidents, and unfortunately I don't have any cave incidents in here specifically, but these are incidents that have happened here in Virginia, or that were national incidents that that people may recognize. You know, the flooding in West Virginia. We had a hot air balloon that caught on fire, and there were people jumping from the hot air balloon, and we had a 3-day search after that. So yeah, I mean, these are the ones that you mention them to somebody, and it brings emotion out, just even if they weren't there, even if they didn't see it. The picture at the very bottom is the F-18 that crashed into the apartment building complex in Virginia Beach, near Oceana Naval Air Station. So again, all of these are things that, you know, we know are significant events. There are those routine events, there are those routine things that we go and do, and there are those others that kind of take our breath away, or make us take a step back and pause for a second. So, you know, what really is that? And the answer, there is a definition, but the answer is really different for every single person. So by definition, a critical incident is any significantly powerful, overwhelming, distressing event. A lot of descriptors in there. And so, you know, again, not every one of those critical incidents results in a crisis. Sometimes we have the tools to be able to deal with those things. We've seen it before. We know we don't get emotionally involved or emotionally attached. And then it can be something fairly routine, and we do end up in a crisis situation. And not every responder will experience a crisis in the same way or to the same degree. We have to watch the new folks, but we also have to watch our experienced folks. And we have to watch those folks that, you know, worry more about image than dealing with the problems, and they tuck those things away because eventually those will get back to us and will eat at us. So some critical incident examples, and I already gave a few on that first page, but line of duty death or serious injury of a responder, multiple casualties, especially when they are severe, cases involving children. Again, we think, you know, most of the time with children, we think of innocence, and so that can be an issue. Subject is known by the responders, and again, I've hit on this one several times already. A case with a high degree of threat or danger. So that may be, you know, some of the more high risk things, like rescues and Ellisons. We know those go off without a hitch, but, you know, while hanging 500 feet in the air kind of adds a little bit of stress to it, as opposed to, you know, just doing something that's a smaller pit or something along those lines. Prolonged cases, especially with a lot of media coverage. The big deal with prolonged cases is how many of us are really good at bowing out and getting the rest we need during an incident. And I think most everybody could probably raise their hand and say, not me. I know that I'm not the best at it, and something that I have to work at. This doesn't happen a lot in cave incidents, more so for the search type incidents where we suspend and we don't have resolution of the case. And that can be a hard pill to swallow for a lot of folks. If, you know, we weren't able to get to find the person or to rescue the person. I know there have been cases where caves have been closed and the body was left in the cave. You know, just lots of different instances there where that may be the case. So a crisis is an acute emotional reaction to a powerful stimulus or demand, as well as a state of emotional turmoil. And so again, we may not get there just because we've been involved in a critical incident. People's normal coping mechanisms may be able to manage, but once they exceed that ability to manage, then that typically is going to put us in that crisis reaction. That person may be in varying levels of distress. The distress may be very minor. It may be, you know, just something that disturbs them when they're reminded of it. or it may be something that takes over and is much more prevalent and kind of affects their day-to-day life, their moment-to-moment life. And so those are cases where we really need to be aggressive in helping them get the assistance that they need. Usually it's temporary and people respond well to assistance, especially, again, if we act early in that time early on when they're having that initial emotional reaction. They're open to answers. They're open to being able to work through the things that have gone on. And so that's the time to access it and treat it early on. So 3 characteristics of crises. Balance is disrupted between thinking and emotions. And again, I'm going to make the assumption that everybody's been there on some level of something that has happened, whether it's a cave incident, whether it's a personal event, whether it's a friend, something like that. We've all been there where that item, pops into our head that reminds us of something, that thing that we see on TV that bothers us and gets those emotions boiling up. Usually coping mechanisms fail, and then evidence of mild or all the way to severe impairment may occur. And so that's those behaviors that we're looking for, whether it's being withdrawn, whether it's increased alcohol use, if it's self-destructive behaviors, different things like that, or just avoidance of situations and not putting themselves in that similar situation again. So there's 4 main categories of that stress. So typically general stress is routine everyday life. What I like to, when I explain this to folks, what I like to think of is it's a cup, and your cup can overflow. Your cup can overflow with good things, and that makes you very emotionally vulnerable. Or your cup can overflow with other things that we didn't plan for them to overflow with. Sarah, are we still good?
No, it looks like your screen share stopped.
Okay. I was gonna say my screen just did something, so.
There we go, we're back.
Okay, sorry about that. So that general stress, that routine everyday life building up, hopefully we keep our cup about half full. We know that we can't be completely stress-free, but then as we get that cumulative stress, that buildup of unresolved stress, maybe we have multiple incidents over a short period of time, or over decades, and we finally reach that point where that cumulative stress has built up. That one thing that is really painful to us rises to the top and fills that cup to its brim, and so then it overflows. The critical incident stress is normal and can be a painful reaction to an event, but the key there is, are we able to empty that cup back down? Are we able to put that extra emotion back where it belongs, or do we have those abnormal conditions that exist? And so we have to watch for those. We have to watch for those changes in ourselves and in our teammates. All right, so mentioned earlier, critical incident stress management and teams. Virginia has a number of teams, and again, yes, this is Virginia specific, but most states have some form of this, and so it's something to certainly reach out and see who administers the programs in your local area, because I'm quite sure that they are available. And really for us, it's a matter of a few phone calls. We can activate that team, and we can get people out to the scene during an incident or shortly thereafter. And there have been some stigmas along with how critical incident stress management is done, and a lot of research has gone into this, and a lot of different viewpoints on how to do this. But just understanding that it involves a lot of different types of tactics, and there are trained professionals and peers that are in there that have received specific training on how to deal with critical incident stress and how to escalate that treatment if it is needed. So some of the tools, just as keeping it simple. Certainly, we've condensed down what could be a pretty lengthy topic into just a short period here tonight. But when we want to think about these things from the get-go and how we set up our incident. So setting up base and attempting to have a quiet space for responders to relax and sleep and unplug from the incident is important. We're not good at it. So if we have somebody that's their assignment is to make sure that we're a little better at it, that can be very helpful in getting people to unplug and rest a little bit. Politely asking responders who are being loud and insensitive. Not saying that anybody in cave rescue or in rescue in general, fire, EMS, could be viewed as insensitive with some of the dark humor that we have sometimes. But that's one of the coping mechanisms. But certainly to remove that from others that may be affected by that behavior. Ensuring accurate information is available. We're all seeking that information as well. We want to know updates of what's going on. It's part of what drives us to stay engaged in the incident and not go get that sleep. As we're afraid we're going to miss something, we're afraid we're going to miss a milestone, or a development that we could go help with. And so just trying to ensure that we have that way to unplug or unwind. One of the great tools that's out there that happens at a lot of the larger disasters is they'll actually bring in massage therapists, and they'll set up chairs and sit there and do massages. That's an awesome tool to be able to bring to the table for multiple reasons. One of the other tools, and it's really in that recognition and taking care of our own, to go back to one of my first slides there, is that really is the goal here, is to recognize these things, recognize what creates this, and then be able to identify the folks that need a little bit more attention in this area. And so briefing and debriefing is one of the places where this can happen. Certainly remaining calm and confident, both on the front end and the back end of giving out taskings. If you're excited, if you're hyped up, that's certainly going to increase their stress level. And if you're not confident about what you're asking them to do, they're not going to be confident, which is going to add to that stress level. We're going to strongly encourage those rest periods. So when they come back off of that task, go get something to eat, go hydrate, go get some rest. And then, certainly the other thing that we can do to set things up and make sure that people are taken care of, we have to think about this on the front end in cave, because it's not as easy as them just coming back to base. And a lot of times is making sure that they have, plenty of food with them and adequate water for the tasks that they're getting ready to go do. And that way they can stay in optimal condition as they move through the cave, as they go to do what they need to do. This is certainly not the time to tell war stories or one up somebody when they're coming back, because that may be that time where they need to unload. They need to explain what they saw, what they experienced, what they were feeling. And so we need to really put in place that active listening ability at this time to be able to access them if they have those emotional needs. With personnel, ensure, again, have we hit some of these things several times and repeated it? Yes, that's why it's in here several times, because it's that important. But ensure they have time off between operational periods. And literally, this is probably something that you're going to have to beat people away for, or push people away in order to get them to do that. But again, if we make it easy, if we make a place close by where they can get rest, where they can unplug, discourage alcohol use as it disrupts REM sleep. And that's where we get that restructuring of our emotions, where we're getting that good rest that resets us and gives us that clean slate to come back to. Rotating assignments so that, especially if we're doing something that's not so pleasant, and, it may be in respect to a recovery. And if we can rotate those assignments so they're not doing that same thing over and over again, if at all possible. Keeping responders engaged and active, and, keeping them talking and doing things that, kind of lighten the atmosphere a little bit. Certainly not inappropriate things, but just keeping people talking and, working through things. And I think we do a good job of this in training, because we're always talking about, why we're doing something and working our way through. So that's a good way to keep things going when we're in that actual event, and make sure that, when we have to be quiet, when we have to be silent, when things need to be quiet, they are. But we want to make sure nobody detaches and gets stressed out on us. Ultimately, it is, and again, this has been controversial with some groups of folks, and there have been studies both ways on this. But overall, overwhelmingly, most of the research comes back and says that, encouraging people to talk through what went on when they're ready to talk through it, that is a good method to work through things. Having somebody actively listening and doing those follow-up questions, and providing some good, valid feedback, talking about how, when they performed a particular task, or they maybe improvised something, and giving them feedback on that. If the crisis response is suspected, then we want to seek assistance. Again, just like my first disclaimer, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but through experience, I know that when I see somebody in distress, I know they need that next level of help. And so getting them to talk to somebody, or getting them to go one-on-one with somebody that's been trained in CISM is that next logical step. Getting them to talk to, maybe it's, just getting them to go aside and talk to their spouse on the phone for a little bit, and being able to engage that way and debrief that way. After the search, follow up with team members. This is one of the things that we're very adamant about doing, specifically with the teams that had direct engagement with with the person that we found, or with a rescue, something along those lines. But new team members, or anybody that we maybe saw that deer in the headlights look, or that odd look while they were on the incident. We're going to follow up with them, make sure that they stay engaged, make sure that they were, that they understood what was going on, and can work their way through, maybe even helping them with some of the tools to be able to work through things. Provide team training specifically for managing stress. So, this is part of that. This is just having the conversations about what we need to do to be able to work through stress, recognize it, take care of each other, encouraging that healthy eating, rest, light exercise, plenty of water. Again, that helps. All of those things help work off that stress that we build up. Those are probably good day-to-day healthy habits to have. Ensure all personnel have access to that CISM team information so that they can do that themselves if they need to. One of the I feel like is a really cool thing that's out now is they basically have peers and counselors, not just through CISM, but just in general, for anybody that feels like they need to talk to somebody, that they need some counseling, that they need some guidance. You can do that online now. There are a number of different platforms that do that. And so that's a great tool to be able to make sure that everybody has access to that. Through Virginia, any of our responders that are covered under one of our Memorandum of Understanding teams have access to basically EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, which allows them to seek out help from a counselor, from a psychologist, from a psychiatrist, whatever they may need to be able to deal with those types of issues. Steer conversations away from criticizing others or criticizing other teams or personnel. That's a normal reaction that we have, especially when things don't necessarily go real well or there were problems. And so we want to take those, and I think in general in the caving community, we do a good job of this. I know in NCRC, that's really what all the courses are built off of, are, you know, taking the criticism away and figuring out better ways to do that the next time. To build on those, use those as lessons learned and best practices as we move through the issues that have come up. So again, no big zingers, I hope, that came out of that. Really just a reminder of things to take care of ourselves, things to look out for. This was shrunk down considerably just to fit into the time period. I will do my best to answer any questions that anybody may have. And any feedback that you may have about this.
Thank you, Billy. That was a terrific presentation. Really appreciate you going over all those topics. All right, do we have any questions? All right, we're going to take a short break then. So thank you again to Billy. And we will reconvene at the top of the hour. You are welcome to stick around and just chat informally to Billy about his presentation or about other topics. And then at the top of the hour, we'll get started with the bad air presentation.